Hi, this is Jonathan from JSModels and welcome to the workshop. Today I wanted to talk to you about the retaining walls, which are relatively new to my range. They are available in both 4mm and 7mm scales in both brick and stone finishes. So behind me we have a 7mm stone, 7mm brick, 4mm brick, and then here is the 4mm stone. I'll talk about the 4mm ones first and then move on to the 7mm ones in a little while. So each section is 200mm from centre to centre, so they build up in multiples of 200mm. You have two arches, a stringer course, top cappings, and then the support piers at either end. Each kit comes with one section in 4mm scale. You have two end piers, one for the left hand end of the run and one for the right hand end of the run as well, and an intermediate pier which then allows you to connect multiple sections together without any visible join, and you can then use the intermediate pillars or piers all the way down the run, and then the narrow ones at the ends if you wish. Each section, as I say, is 200mm wide. They are 108mm high. The wall, hopefully you can see there, has a very slight back angle to it, as it should have. You can see there the difference between the plumb inner wall and the slightly angled outer wall. On the reverse you have detailing, the brick or stone detailing to the reverse of the wall as well, and these three pillars which you can use to support an upper level. The height of those pillars is 80mm, so there's plenty of clearance there if you want to run a hidden line or siding behind the retaining wall underneath your upper level. So the 4mm versions come in a pack like this. As I say, there's one section per pack, one 200mm section per pack. In there you've got 3 sheets of 2mm MDF which make up that. Now the brick versions are all identical, because being brick, it doesn't matter about the repeating pattern. It's a fixed pattern of brickwork, and so you can repeat that along a long length. With the stone versions, I didn't want it to be the same pattern on each section, so there are actually 4 variants of this which will be supplied randomly, so that you don't get that thing of, you see the stone pattern here and it's supposed to be random stone, but it's exactly the same in the one next to it and the one next to that as well. So as I say, there are 4 different versions, so each one of those versions has a slightly different stone pattern to it, so that you don't get that repeating pattern visible down a long length of wall. We'll come on to the 7mm version now, which is very similar in terms of the design. The main difference in construction is that the 7mm ones are in 3mm MDF, not 2mm like the 4mm scale versions. And the other main difference is that the 7mm scale versions come in a pack of 2 sections. Each section in the 7mm scale is 350mm wide, so in a pack you get 2 sections, so 700mm of wall, and they are 188mm high. But other than those differences, they are the same design essentially. Again, with the stone ones you have that, there are 4 different section designs, so that you have a slightly different stone pattern on each section. So these are all available to order now. By the way, the 4mm versions are available from stock. The 7mm versions are available on a cut to order basis at the moment. They will be in stock at some point, depending on how popular they are, but for the moment they are cut to order. You can order them from the website, which is www.jsmodels.co.uk, and like I say, they are available now. So we'll move on over to the bench there, and I'll run you through a build of one of the 4mm ones. You'll see how it goes together. There are quite a few pieces, but it does build up very quickly, and it's very straightforward. So we'll move over to the bench. Okay, so here we are over at the bench. We've got the kit that we're going to build, which is the retaining wall in stone in 4mm scale. We've got some adhesive, and for this I'm using the Deluxe Materials laser cut kit glue, which I have been trialing for a while and I really like it, so much so that I have started stocking it. So that's available from the website as well. You can just use normal PVA, but this does have a couple of advantages over normal PVA, which I'll come to shortly. One thing that it does come with is it comes with a needle applicator. You do get a couple of spare, one spare needle in the pack as well, but the needles I find do tend to block fairly quickly, especially these, which are really thin and long. So I tend to use these, which are a little bit larger diameter and shorter, don't tend to block quite as easily, and I do those in a little pack. So in there you get 4 needles and a little stopper for the bottle, which you don't get in the standard kit. So both the glue and the needle sets are available via the website as well. So we've also got a utility knife for cutting pieces from the sheets, a scalpel, a couple of sanding sticks, and some pegs just to hold pieces together. One of the advantages of the laser cut kit glue is that it does dry a lot quicker than normal PVA, so you're not waiting as long for things to set, but the pegs will just to hold things in place while it does go off. So let's crack this open and we'll get building. Right, so we'll get the pack open. So in here we've got 3 sheets of 2mm MDF with the various parts on, and we've got full build instructions. I'll just pop them over there. So first job is to cut the parts from the sheet. So with my kits, all the pieces are held in by little tabs that you need to cut through on the back of the sheet. I use a utility knife for this. You can use a scalpel, but it's easy with the utility knife because you can apply a bit more pressure a bit more easily. So first thing we're going to do is cut all the pieces from the sheets. We're going to start with sprue B with the backing piece, so we'll just cut that out. So there are just 6 tabs I think on this. Yeah, 6 tabs to cut through there, and we can pop the piece out of the sheet. So I'll do that now for the rest of the pieces that we need. In fact, what I might do is just cut all the pieces from all the sprues while we're doing it. Okay, so that's all the pieces cut from the sprues. The first step in the instructions is to glue the stringer course into the back piece, so we'll do that first of all. So we'll remove the stopper from the adhesive and put a needle in, and then all we're going to do is just apply a bit of glue and then pop that into place. That just drops into there, and just hold that for a few seconds. and then the next step is to glue the front piece over the top of that. So just run a bit of glue around the perimeter. And then that piece fits over the string, of course, the slot in that piece fits over it, and we just line that up at the edges. Now the vertical alignment on this, because the wall's angled backwards, these pieces don't want to be aligned top and bottom. You want to line it up using the mortar courses rather than the top and bottom edges. So we'll line it up with the left and right edges. There is just a little bit of play in it, and then we just press that into position, and that's the first stage done. So we'll just leave that to go off for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and do the rest. So now that we've given that a couple of minutes to go off, the next stage is to flip this over, and then what we're going to do is put in the supports at the rear. So there are these little triangular pieces here, so we glue those into position. So just a bit of adhesive on there, pop that in there, and then the supports themselves, we just run a bit of adhesive on, put a bit in there, and then that just slots into position over the top of those. Now another advantage of this is it's very thin, is this adhesive. So if we want where the tabs are, where we didn't put any adhesive, we can just run a bead of adhesive onto there on both sides, and because it's quite runny, that will then soak in and bond those pieces nice and strong. So I'll continue and do the others. That's the second one done. Okay, so that's those three bonded into place. So again, we'll just let that go off for a few minutes and then come back to the next stage. Okay, so we've let that set for a couple of minutes, and you can see the adhesives just drying off a little bit. So the next stage is to put the reverse side of the wall into position. Now, because of the angle that the wall sits at, this doesn't want to sit flat onto there. It actually sits onto these three little nibs here, so it will hook over at either end, and it sits tight against the back panel, or the what's now the middle panel at the top, and hopefully you can see that underneath at the bottom there is a little bit of a gap. So to glue that in place, we're just going to run a bead of the adhesive along the very top edge, and then just put a little bit on each of those little nibs there, and then we can just press that into position. A little bit of glue squeezed out on the top there, so I'll just wipe that off. Can stand it up and just hold that in place with a couple of pegs, while that adhesive just sets up a little bit. And as you can see, that's the main structure of the wall built. So next up is to add the piers on the front and on the back, and then the cappings, and then that's it, it's done. What I'm going to do with this, I'm not going to put a pier on this end, I'm going to put one on this end, and then this that you saw earlier in the video, this piece will then slot into there. It won't go on because of the peg at the moment. Move that over a little bit. That piece will then go into there and continue that length of wall. So again, we'll just leave that to set up for a couple of minutes and we'll be back shortly. So now that this has dried a little bit, we can get on and do the next stage, which is to put the top capping on here. So all we do here, where the tabs were, they're just a little bit proud there, so just gonna trim those off and give them a bit of a sand, just so it's flat for the capping to sit on. And then the capping piece, the main capping piece, just sits on here like that and wraps around those two tabs there, like that. So we'll get that glued on, and then the final stage is doing the piers. So I'll just run a bit of adhesive down there. Pop that into place. And then once that's gone off, we'll come back and do the pier down the right hand side. Like I said, we're not putting a pier on the left hand end there because it's going to connect to this one that we've already got here. Here are the three pieces that come in the kit for the piers on the front. Because of the way the stonework is, we've got smaller stone courses on the top wall than we have on the main wall. So the pier pieces are the same. We have a smaller stone course at the top and then larger ones at the bottom. So there we have the intermediate one, which goes between two kits, like that one there. We have a left hand end and a right hand end. Now if we were fitting the right hand end cap end pier, that would go on there like that, and if it is the right hand end, you can, if you want, trim that tab off the end before you do the assembly. That is detailed in the instructions, so you can trim that off if you don't need it. Because we're just going to build this as a section and extend this one, we're going to put the intermediate pier on, and then we can then extend that with further kits. So that one goes on there. We're not putting one on the left hand end, obviously, because we're going to connect into this here. And so we've got the front piece and then the back piece, which has little notches in the bottom corners, which just sit around there. So that will just sit around that rear support. So we'll get those glued on now. So I'll just run a bit of glue down there. Now, because we want to extend this, like I say, we're not putting this this end one on, but we can use this end piece as a guide to get this piece straight, because when we put this on here, we can obviously butt it up to these points here, but there's nothing to set the distance at the bottom there. Let's just move that into frame a bit better. So what we can do is just hold that piece there while we pop that on, and then that will allow us to get this edge flush here. Then that will then set this at the correct distance at the bottom here. So again, we're not relying on the top and bottom edges lining up with the piece below because of the angle of the wall. We're actually going off the stone courses and getting those lining through. So we just glue that on there. That piece can come out because we don't need it. So we'll just pop that on there like that. And then same with this back piece, we'll just put a bit of adhesive on there. Pop that on like that, and we can just align this edge just by eye and just make sure that the stone course runs through correctly. I might want lifting up very slightly. There we go. So that's now nice and straight. So we'll just shove a peg on there just to hold that in position. Just check that it's not moved. Yeah, that's fine. Obviously, if we're doing the left hand edge, then just glue that on there, and then use the relevant half piece there on the back and glue those into position as well. But we're not doing that, so we'll take those off, and that piece will then join on to that piece. So we've got the run continuing. So the only thing left to do now is, once that glue's set up a little, is just take the full pier capping and just pop that on the top like that one. So once this has had a couple of minutes to set up, I'll pop that on, and then we'll be done. So I've just left that for a minute or two, just for the adhesive to go off. You can see it's still a bit wet in there, but it'll be okay. Take that off. Just make sure everything's still stuck where it should be. So the last stage is just to take this cap in, and we'll just run a bit of adhesive on there. We want to be careful not to get too much adhesive squeezing out inside there, because obviously if we then want to connect another piece into it at a later date, we don't want anything getting in the way. So we just line that up by eye, just getting the overhang at the left and right and front and back even. And that's it. That's the wall completed. So that section will now just plug into that section, and you've got 400mm of wall there. And you can obviously carry on and have as many sections in the wall as you like. You can bond these together, glue these together whenever you're ready. You can paint them separately and then join them at a later date, or join them all into one long wall the length that you want before you paint it. But I find it's probably easier to keep them in smallish sections, so maybe join them together in pairs like this, and then paint them, and then join them all together at the end if you're doing a big long run. So there you go. As you can see, it goes together nice and simple, and it's not taken long at all. It's including time for letting the adhesive go off, it's taken I think about 20-25 minutes to put that together. Okay, so here we are with the kit finished. Obviously we've got the section here that was already built, this section that we've just built from the kit, the end piers that we didn't need, obviously they're left over, so you can use those for testing various paint finishes and things like that. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video. The retaining walls, as I say, in both brick and stone, and in 4mm or double O gauge and 7mm O gauge, are both available now via the website, which is www.jsmodels.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and if you could give us a thumbs up on the video as well, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.